Narcissistic abuse. It's something we see circulating on social media and online all over the place. But the one thing we don't talk about enough is why women are more likely to experience it. My name is Caitlin, and I'm the host of Not So Dumb Blonde. Welcome back, retired good girls, to another episode of What I Learned This Week as a Master's of Social Work grad student and soon to be therapist. This is something I have been dying to talk about because I see so much about narcissism circulating around the internet. And I really want to talk about why this is happening and why women are more likely to experience narcissistic abuse from men. And it's not just about the individual. It's truly not what you think. There are reasons behind this, and it's about how men and women are socialized to experience trauma. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Not So Dumb Blonde. I'm on a mission to help women stop trying to fix themselves and start understanding themselves by relearning how to not suppress or explain away their feelings and needs through evidence-based healing modalities, conversation, and community. So whether you're navigating relationships, career stress, healing from your past, or simply just feeling overwhelmed by your inner world, this space is going to be for you. I'm Caitlin. I'm a soon-to-be therapist, and I'm currently working towards my master's in social work. With an additional master's in international relations, it helps me bring a global and systems-based lens to women's mental health. I've worked with teenage girls in inpatient mental health settings, and I've helped hundreds of women in Denver find community and resources. This podcast will discuss trauma, attachment, emotional regulation, boundaries, and relationship patterns in a way that's real, evidence-based, and actually usable. Because healing is not about fixing yourself, it's about learning how to work with who you already are. Thank you for being here. Borderline personality disorder is estimated to affect about 1.6 to 5.9% of the population, and narcissistic personality disorder about 0.5 to 5% based on research from the DSM-5 and large epidemiological studies like those led by Grant BF. To put that into perspective globally, with a world population of about 8 billion people, that's roughly 128 to 472 million people for borderline personality disorder and about 40 to 400 million for narcissistic personality disorder. Now, I know those numbers sound super high, and they do sound big percentage-wise. These are still relatively small portions of the population who meet the full diagnostic criteria for something like BPD or NPD when we're thinking about the population on a larger scale, which means that most people that are being labeled as narcissists online do not actually meet the criteria. They're showing traits like emotional immaturity, lack of empathy, or avoidance, and this is important. Research also shows that about 70 to 75% of people diagnosed with borderline personality disorder are women. That's huge. While narcissistic personality disorder is more commonly diagnosed in men, I think the numbers were 50 to 75% of people diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder were men. But the reason why that fluctuates a lot is because it's just not studied as much. But these numbers are very debated because many clinicians believe that men are underdiagnosed with BPD and women are underdiagnosed with NPD. So even though there's a lot of stuff out there who are debating this and researching this, there is a massive debate in the psychology community on whether or not people are being diagnosed correctly, underdiagnosed, or overdiagnosed based on gender and identity. When we look at borderline personality disorder, studies show that about 70 to 90% of individuals report histories of trauma, abuse, or neglect. This has been consistently found in research by clinicians like John G. Gunderson and Mary C. Zanner. Narcissistic traits are also linked to early attachment wounds and developmental trauma. Work by Otto Kernberg and Heinz Kohut suggests narcissism can develop as a defense against emotional injury. This is very important, because we're going to look at this from more of a socialization frame. The other day, I was in one of my classes, and the professor said something that just completely blew my mind. It kind of freaked me out, to be honest. She said that NPD and BPD are the same thing, but NPD is an expression of trauma through men, and BPD is an expression of trauma through women. And I decided to go on a full-on rampage researching this the best that I could to understand where that was coming from, because it's just not something that we talk about enough, and it's extremely nuanced. And because both of these diagnoses are so stigmatized, we have to be very careful with how we frame these. both of these patterns can come from trauma, then we have to ask, why do they show up differently? This is very important. These are often socialized to express anger outwardly. Dominance is rewarded and vulnerability is discouraged. So again, it's much more normalized and it's way more accepted for men to be outwardly aggressive or angry, but it's not normalized or accepted for them to as much be vulnerable, right? Girls are often to be socialized to internalize their emotions. Anger is punished, it is definitely frowned upon, and sensitivity is labeled as too much. So women are much more likely to go inward and attack themselves because that's how societally they have been raised. Men are much more likely to externalize their anger and pain because it is more socially acceptable. Men are able to project their pain onto others. Women are socialized to project it onto themselves, which is a major part of why we have this podcast, because we are tired of blaming ourselves. Borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder are not the same diagnosis, but they can come from similar roots: trauma, attachment wounds, and unmet emotional needs. Same root, different adaptation. I remember when I first heard my professor say that they were basically the same thing, I truly was like, I felt sick, because when you have complex trauma, again, a lot of those traits overlap with BPD, and you hear something like that, it can make you feel like you're fundamentally harmful or broken. What happened to me, and the understanding that behaviors are adaptations, not identity. So that's something that really helped me kind of reframe my thinking and understand that these behaviors are just a way of people learning how to cope and survive, not a part of who they actually are. And those coping mechanisms can 100% change if a person wants to. There's also another personality disorder that gets left out of this conversation a lot, which is antisocial personality disorder. And this really concerns me. Antisocial personality disorder affects about 1 to 4% of the population, so roughly 80 to 320 million people globally. And it's characterized more by patterns like violating others' rights, lack of remorse, manipulations, and likely criminal behavior. And I think that this is where social media gets a little bit confusing, and where we have to be really, really careful with the type of information that we are absorbing through TikTok, through Instagram, through YouTube, from people who are not trained to actually understand and speak on these things. Because when people describe narcissists, they're often describing behaviors that overlap more with antisocial personality traits. And again, they are two different things. I want to be really clear. Narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder are absolutely not the same thing, even though people often confuse them online. So what we're really seeing is a mix of narcissistic traits, antisocial traits, and emotional immaturity that are being grouped under one label. And that doesn't mean that the harm is not real. Narcissistic abuse is very real. I've experienced it, and I will never, ever minimize that for anyone. But labeling every harmful person as a narcissist can actually take away from the understanding of the real behavior patterns and how to protect yourself. We all have some level of narcissistic traits. Healthy narcissism can look like confidence, ambition, and self-worth. It's all on a scale. You can have mild traits and you can have moderate traits, right? I do not think that all narcissism is bad. I think that some of it can be healthy. And I look at it kind of like femininity and masculinity. Having a balance is really important. But the issue is when it turns into lack of empathy, entitlement, and exploitation of other people. Borderline personality disorder. So BPD is one of the most treatable personality disorders that exist. And we talk about that a lot in this podcast. It's something that I will talk about as much as I can, because I'm very passionate about destigmatizing this diagnosis. Because Marsha Linehan, she's the one that created dialectical behavior therapy. She found that with therapies like DBT, around 70 to 80% of people experience significant symptom reduction over time. Talk about this a lot in many of my podcasts. And I think, to be even a little bit more precise, I actually think it's around 88% of people who complete up to a year of DBT can go into remission and no longer meet the diagnostic criteria for BPD. I will be posting links to literature so that you can fact check and look into all these things in the show notes. But I think that that's extremely important, because you can heal. You can absolutely heal through these stigmatizing diagnoses. And that is so important to keep in mind for anybody who's struggling navigating their trauma, or if you feel like you just don't fit in, or you're broken. That is just not true, and you can always work towards healing. So here's something important. If only a small percentage of women meet the criteria for these diagnoses, but so many women relate to experiences of narcissistic abuse, then this is not just about diagnosis. It's about patterns, it's about trauma, and it's about how we've been socialized. Everyone who hurts you is a narcissist, but that does mean that the harm is real. Someone having narcissistic traits in a relationship may be enough for you to not be in that relationship. It can still be harmful and toxic, even if someone is not a diagnosed narcissist. So ladies, I just want you to keep in mind that, again, it is okay. I have found that it's very common for women to feel like they have to justify why they leave a relationship. Just saying that we are not happy is not enough for some reason. And I do think, again, it goes back to how we've been socialized in society. We are also allowed to choose. It's not just about being chosen, and not feeling happy is enough. Feeling not supported by your partner is enough. Those are enough of a reason to walk away from a relationship. Whether or not that person is a narcissist is for them to figure out and understand. And I do agree that it can be very validating for people to know and understand that the pain that they're experiencing is very real. But we don't have to diagnose someone with narcissism in order to validate our pain. But again, I want to make sure that when I'm saying this, that people who are listening are not thinking that that means anything to you if you have dated a partner who you believe to be a narcissist. I want to validate that because that is very real, like I said. But I would just encourage people to try to look at what is happening within themselves and understand that it is enough to not want to be with someone. Even just thinking that they might be a narcissist or having narcissistic traits is also enough to walk away from the relationship and make that partner not right for you. And hopefully that person decides to go on their own healing journey and figure out whatever they need to do for themselves to be happy. But for you, it is enough. It is enough. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to diagnose it. It is enough. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode. I wanted to give a quick update that I will be hosting a coffee and comedy event here in Denver. I will be posting the details and promotional material in the show notes, and I will be posting it in the weeks to come. But we're going to have 3 female comedians. We're going to be raising funds for teen and women's mental health, and it's going to be a super fun night here in Denver. So I hope to see you there. And thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening. If something in today's episode